is being hosted. So this event is hosted on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and we would like to extend our invitation to everyone to acknowledge the land upon which you are joining us today in the chat. So if you would like to know more about First Nations and Indigenous territories where we are living on, please visit native-land.ca. Okay, so for the agenda today, we have quite a bit to cover today. So first of all, we will talk about what is accessibility, and then we will introduce the accessibility checking tool, Ally. And then we will also have a demonstration of Ally on Canvas. Then we will have some interactive activities that are based on common issues found on Ally. Last but not least, we will wrap up today's section with some Q&A. So first of all, I will have Gabrielle to talk about what is accessibility.
Thank you, Marika. So when we're thinking about this tool that we're about to introduce, Ally, we wanted to talk a little bit about why it's important to think about web accessibility and accessibility for online courses. So we wanted to define accessibility as about creating and implementing an even playing ground for your students. So everyone should be able to equally perceive, understand, interact with, and navigate content and situations, and there must be an equal opportunity of participation. However, how this participation is achieved could be flexible or different depending on the student or depending on the task. So below you can see in the image in the previous slide, thank you, Marika, that we have these different ideas that we often talk about when we're thinking about accessibility. So equality, accommodations, and accessibility. So when we're thinking about equality, the idea is that everyone gets the same thing, but in the image you can see there are 3 people trying to use a whiteboard. For one of them, it's totally manageable. One person is reaching, and then of course the person who is using a walker is unable to use it at all, even though they were provided with the same situation. So then often we'll think about accommodations as an alternative to the idea of, giving everyone the same thing as a way that everyone can participate. And you can see that in the image, everyone is able to access the whiteboard through retrofitting it. So we've added there's a ramp for the person who's using a walker or wheelchair and a box for somebody else to stand on so that they can reach. Now, these accommodations are totally valuable and useful in an educational context, but ideally, things are set up in a way that we don't have to retrofit or add accommodations if necessary, or if we don't need to, when we could just design with accessibility in mind from the beginning. So at the end of this graphic, you can see that everyone is able to access the whiteboard because they have increased the size, lowered it so that it is accessible for people who aren't able to reach up that high, but still high enough so that people who are taller are able to use it too. So thinking about an even playing ground, but also thinking about how we can design from the ground up to make things accessible for students. So on that note, and I'll get Marika to move to the next slide, thank you. When we're thinking about students, there are a few things to keep in mind. Even though we're thinking about accessibility and our brains often immediately move to students with disabilities, accessible materials will benefit everyone. It's not just students with disabilities. You may have students in your course who do not speak English as their first language, who might benefit from something like a transcript. You may have students who are remote, who have internet connections which aren't perfect. So adding those accessibility features, whether it's a transcript or using image descriptions, providing things in different formats, can really help a broad spectrum of students. So not just those with disabilities, but people with poor internet, people who might also, have really busy lives and not be able to, always be sitting at their computer, accessing things with internet. They might be trying to do things while they're commuting. So keeping those things in mind as well as part of accessibility. Finally, as well, even though at UBC we are very lucky to have the Centre for Accessibility for students who have disabilities to gain support, not every student is going to disclose their accessibility needs. So by making our course materials as accessible as possible, we're really ensuring that all students have a great learning experience. We're not putting students in a situation where they're asking for things to be retrofitted, and that there is then less sort of strain for the instructor to then try to retrofit things as well. By having things be accessible from the get-go, everyone's going to benefit, and in the long term, it is a lot less work for you as an instructor or as a designer to make the course usable, functional, and wonderful for all your students.
Okay, great. Okay, so moving up, what is Ally? So Ally is an accessibility checking tool that is integrated into Canvas. So the Faculty of Education is taking part in the pilot of Ally, and all the 2022 Winter 2 Canvas courses within the faculty will include Ally, this tool. And so Ally has been enabled in used in courses at UBC, and it has been extensively used within Master of Educational Technology program courses to improve accessibility. So Ally adheres to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which ensure that online content is as equitable and accessible as possible. So using Ally actually provides opportunities to know more about web content accessibility and also find out common accessibility issues that in some case can be fixed or improved. And the primary goal of this tool is actually to make your course more accessible. So using this tool not only provides in-the-moment learning opportunities to understand web accessibility and why it is important, but it also helps to provide to develop the habit of putting accessibility in mind when creating content. Okay, so Canvas do actually have accessibility checker built in on the rich text editor. So you can use that alongside with Ally. So this this Canvas checker actually allows you to run a quick accessibility test on content that you have created within the editor. So it includes text, images, and hyperlinks. Some of the examples that this checker will flag include pictures that are lacking of alt text, or text that is too small, or with color contrast that is doesn't contrast well with its background, that makes reading difficult for users with visual impairments. And the advantages of this checker is actually it is integrated with the Canvas Rich Text Editor, so it can detect issues within it. And it is also easy to use, as it shows the issues and also suggests the actions to take for fixing these issues. However, the checker only shows the accessibility issues found on the rich text editor, so of that page, and doesn't have an overview report for the whole course. And it also flags and suggests how accessibility issues can be fixed, but it doesn't explain why fixing it can improve accessibility and why it is important. So the two cons mentioned here are actually complemented by Ally. Okay, so speaking of benefits of Ally, so Ally does generate a comprehensive report that lists all the detectable issues, and it also shows which of them are top priorities to fix. And apart from letting you know how to fix the accessibility issues, Ally also explains why it is important and how it can benefit the learner if the issue is fixed. And another unique advantage of Ally is which is also the only feature that is available to students, is the alternative format for content. So it allows students to download the text content in multiple alternative formats, such as audio MP3 file or electronic braille. And however, there's one drawback of Ally, which is that it is very sensitive in picking picking up all the accessibility issues in all content within the course that is programmed to detect. So don't worry or feel bad if you can't actually reach 100% for the score. Okay, so there are actually three main elements that I'll cover today on Ally. So that includes accessibility report, accessibility indicators, and the alternative formats. So for the accessibility report, Ally's course accessibility report provides an overview of the accessibility issues found in the entire course so that you can get the big picture, and it also is grouped by content type. As you can see on the picture, there's the all content type with the different categories underneath. It also lists all the issues identified in the course with specific details as well, where we will show you in the demonstration. And this is also where you can find the overall accessibility score for the course, which you can see on the top left corner of the image. So you can see this course is 47%. So this score is calculated based on the potential accessibility issues found in each piece of the content, so no matter it is published or not. So the overall score is actually not that important. So what it is more important is actually understand what content Ally has flagged. It may be difficult or even impossible to achieve a high accessibility score for the course or for every piece of content, and that is totally fine. And the goal of using this tool is to improve accessibility where you can. So there really is no specific score that you should be aiming for. And even a score of 100% may actually still have room for improvement because Ally cannot check all possible accessibility issues. Okay, so moving on, we'll talk about accessibility indicators. So these are the dial icons that you can see on the screen now. So Ally provides you feedback on accessibility of your course files with the color dials that appear next to the file names. And these indicators are only visible to instructors or TA of the course. And it shows up on items within the accessibility report, as well as on all the embedded contents, including images, files, and videos uploaded to Canvas throughout the course. So the red indicator means that there are severe accessibility issues on the document or file that requires work to improve. And the orange one means that the document or file is somewhat accessible, but still needs some work to improve. And then there's the light green icon that the file is mostly accessible, but there can still be room for improvement. And then last but not least is the dark green icon, which means a perfect accessibility score, but there may still be room for improvement. As I mentioned before, Ally cannot check for all possible accessibility issues. So when you click on these indicators on Canvas, a pane will show up on the screen, and it will show up it will describe the problem as well as guide you through on how to fixing these issues. Okay, the last one would be the alternative formats. So these are available on all the published pages on Canvas. So it is also the only feature that is available to students. And so there are actually 7 common ones that Ally is able to convert the text format into, so including the EPUB, electronic braille, audio, beeline reader, immersive reader, HTML, OCR, PDF. So it also depends on which, so the type of files, the types of alternative formats that are created from Ally depends on the original content that you have on Canvas. So some formats are only available for certain file types. For example, the OCR PDF, it is only available when the original file is a PDF of an image. So other file types won't have this alternative format created. And if you don't see an option to download alternative formats, it is It means that the file is not supported. It's not a supported content file on Ally. Okay, then we will now have Aryan to show us what Ally, how Ally works on Canvas.
Thank you, Marika. So I'm going to proceed with a brief demo of how Ally works in your course. Can you see my screen? Yeah, perfect. All right, so this is my sandbox. And upon installing Ally, there are 3 features, as Marika previously stated: the accessibility report, the alternative formats, and the indicators. I'm going to start off with the accessibility report. The accessibility report can be found towards the left side of your screen in the course navigation menu, and it's usually above the settings button. So if you scroll down, you can see accessibility report here. I'm going to open that up. Okay, so the accessibility report gives you a general overview of the course's accessibility score, and it lists all the different types of course content, such as images, pages, assignments, quizzes, discussion topics, PDF documents, announcements, etc. It gives you certain breakdowns, such as the content with the easiest issues to fix, and of course, the lowest scoring content, which should be your #1 priority. But for this demo, I'm going to start off with the content with the easiest issues to fix. So you click the start button. As you can see here, we have a few images. And it looks like we have an accessibility score of 25%, which falls under the red indicator. And I'm presuming these images lack alt text. So we're going to go into them and really look at what the issue is here. Yep, I was right. So these images lack alt text. Now, as Marika previously mentioned, the accessibility report in Ally does give you certain guidelines as to like what is an alt text and what it means and how to write a good description for a picture. So if we click on this button, what this means, it'll give us an overview of what an image description is and how we can write one. So it breaks down why describing images matter. It provides better context. It facilitates searching. It's essential for students with visual impairments. And it also breaks down how you can write a good description. So provide a textual alternative, and it gives you an example of an image. So as you can see here, it's an image that says grown for biofuel. So the description clearly states what's happening in the image: a farmer standing in a field of yellow canola crops with a sign in the foreground reading grown for biofuel. So everything is clear. The image is properly described. And it just breaks down different kinds of examples and different kinds of descriptions that you can give for your images, so that you're properly satisfying the requirement. Marika will delve deeper into what is considered an appropriate alternative description and how you can write it better. But in this case, if we're looking at this image here, if it's for an art history course, it wouldn't be a decorative image. But for any other course in that matter, I would presume it would be a decorative image. In that case, you would clearly state that it is a decorative image, and yeah. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look into some of the low scoring content here. As you can see, got some low scoring items. You can also find these items when you're scrolling through your course content, not in the accessibility report, but in other pages, such as your announcements, your modules, assignments, discussions. So if you look at the modules page and you scroll down, you should see an indicator pop up here saying that the accessibility score for this document is low. And this makes it easy for you to fix. So you just go into it, click on the indicator, and why is the accessibility score low for this document? So it says the PDF is scanned. What does this mean? So scanned documents created are often, so it prevents searching, it blocks copy and paste. It's unusable for students with visual impairments because screen reading software relies on being able to interact with real digital text, and scanned documents don't have that. It's hard to read. So this would be an issue that we could deal with, but the great thing about Ally is that it provides you with alternative formats, and an alternative format that it provides you with is the OCRED, which probably stands for Optical Character Recognition document, that converts the scanned PDF into a readable document for visually impaired students. So if we click on the alternative formats button, as you can see, it has a bunch of file conversions there, different types of file types. The OCRED PDF is right there, HTML, ebook, electronic braille, audio, the Beeline reader, and the immersive reader. So we're gonna click on the OCRED PDF, click on download.
And as we're waiting for that one, I'll just quickly butt in, Aryan. These alternative formats are available for any page on Canvas too, not just for uploaded documents. So while you're going through your course and you're finding inaccessible things, your students will also be able to access that alternative formats option, so that if, for example, they wanted to listen to their Canvas content page instead of reading it, they'll be able to download the audio. And as Aryan's just demonstrated, accessible PDFs are a big problem. They're really difficult to make. So this is actually kind of a nice tool too, because it'll do that OCR scan for you. And then you could potentially re-upload it so it's more accessible.
Yep, exactly. And this is what an OCRED document looks like, a document that's readable. And yeah, so that's what it essentially does. It converts your pages into suitable formats that are suitable for different audiences. All right, stop sharing here.
Okay, and I think
Just
Marika, yeah, great.
Yes.
Awesome.
Just a second. Okay, so thanks, Aryan. So now we'll go over some of the common issues that we find on Ally. I mean, Ally is able to find on our Canvas course. So one of them is adding alt text. And so what is actually alt text? So alt text is actually, so images can be a great way to engage students and also help communicate complex ideas. So image descriptions, also known as alt text, provide a text-based description that are alternative to an image. Why is why is that important to have alt text on an image? So for students with visual impairments, they will have difficulty perceiving the message from the image if there is no image description to explain the content of the image. And it is also crucial for their learning because screen readers actually can't read images. And for all students, text descriptions can provide a deeper context to aid their comprehension. So it benefits students who learn better from the text than from images. And in some cases, an image doesn't show up or can't be downloaded when a student is with poor network connection. And so then the alt text will still be able to convey the message to the student if it's available. Oops, there's a description here. Okay. So now let's talk about how can you actually write a good alt text. So as Aryan showed earlier, Ally actually is a learning tool, so it also provides some of the guidelines on how to write a good alt text, and these are actually some key points from Ally as well. So first of all, we'll have to describe the image based on the page context. As Aryan showed just now, so an image that can be decorative in one context may be actually an image that convey message on art class. So depends on, so you have to write an alt text that actually conveys the full meaning of the image, but remember to be concise as well. So don't write too much of a text for the alt text. So just keep it clear and concise. And also avoid saying image of or picture of in front of your alt text, because the screen reader will automatically add that phrase when they're interpreting that image, that alt text for the image. And if you do have an image that has a complex idea, such as infographics, you can write a separate caption underneath it, and rather than using the alt text. And if you have an image that is only for decorative purpose, you can just mark them as decorative, and if they don't represent any relevant content to the material. Okay, so
I might just quickly jump in here, Marika, with a quick note about how alt text works with Ally. So like both Aryan and Marika have said, we want to make sure that the image is conveying that the alt text is conveying the full meaning. And what I would call a drawback of Ally, especially if you're using the accessibility report, is that it can decontextualize your image because you just get the image on its own. You might not have the information about the content that's around it, which is where those indicator gauges really come in handy. So if you're finding that you go into the accessibility report, it's asking for you to write alt text for an image, and you're thinking, well, I mean, what am I using this image for? Like, what information is really pertinent? It might be worth leaving the accessibility report, going into that page specifically, and then clicking on the indicator to then write your alt text so that you have quick access to the page's content. So you can determine what the context is and ensure that when you're conveying the full meaning of the image, you're not including any extra details that might not be necessary, and then focusing on what might be really important. So on that note, thanks, Marika.
Okay, so let's have a more interactive activity after listening to us for such a long time. So for this image, let's pick the best alt text for this image. So I will now pull up a poll. Okay, so now you should be able to see the poll. I will give you guys a couple seconds, maybe. So there are 3 options.
And so you can either use the poll, we'll launch it, but you can also type in the chat. So which of the following would
Yes.
be the best alt text for that image?
Yeah, you can just type it in the chat with the ABC, so you don't have to type the whole thing. Yeah, okay, I think I'll just end the poll now. So, okay, I think we got someone picked B as the answer. So yes, so that's actually the correct answer. So option A is actually not descriptive enough to let a person with visual impairments who hasn't like seen Tower of Pisa, so they don't know what it looks like actually. And then B actually gave a reasonable description of the image, so you kind of know the building structure and how many floors it has, so it's a good description. And then for C, it actually has too much context, and then it's actually too much information that is probably irrelevant to the image itself. Okay, so on to you, Gabrielle, for the context structure.
Yeah, great. So another issue that Ally will pull up a lot is content structure. So Canvas does have options for ordered heading and paragraph styling, which will ensure that the content can be read by a screen reader, and be more easily adapted into alternative formats. Because these paragraph styling options are also automatically set to be at particular pixel widths or font sizes, pardon me, it really does facilitate reading. It just means that your headings and subheadings will be really clear to students, especially if they're using a screen reader, but even if they aren't, this really does facilitate reading. A note is that heading levels cannot be skipped, and so subheadings should be the next level down from the previous heading before it. So Marika, if you could click, we have an example here of a page that might be on Canvas. So this is a really basic one. We've got the page title is colors, and this is going to be labeled as heading 1. That's okay. On Canvas, the page title will always be heading 1, which means that when you get into the rich text editor, the next available heading is going to be heading 2 always. You don't need to worry about adding heading 1. This is always going to be the page title, so you don't need to worry about that. But you can see here that the overall idea is colors, and then our next heading down is primary colors. And then because I'm still talking about primary colors, but a subheading of that, the subtractive model of primary colors, I can then label that as heading 3. And then within that, I have another subheading, which would be heading 4. And then below that, the paragraph is labeled as a paragraph. This is available in the rich text editor on Canvas, but it's also something that would be available to you on Word, or if you're using like a Word document to create content and put it on Canvas, those heading and paragraph styling options are available there too. So I would really recommend getting used to using this, because it does make a really big difference. So we're going to have another quick interactive activity. Marika, if you can move to the next slide. And we have, again, just a image here, which has some content that would be on Canvas, and we have some options on the side. I think we might need to click a few times to get them all up. So if we can launch the poll, and we might need to, yep, the order wasn't great there, but we have heading 1 is A, heading 2 is B, C is heading 2 as well, D is heading 4, and E is heading 3. So which of these options, A through E, is incorrectly labeled if we're using that heading structure? So if the poll has been launched, we can see if we can get an answer. And then once we do, we can release the results. So Marika, have you got the...
Yep.
Good. And our answer should be
We got a poll for answer D.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. So you can see in this example, we've actually skipped a heading in between C and D. So with web conferencing, this is a subheading under online learning. And within web conferencing, we have two ideas, but they're both a sort of equal sort of position within that like subheading, and we can't skip any headings. So from heading 2, the next heading down should always be heading 3. Because Zoom and MS Teams are both types of web conferencing, they should have the same heading level. So heading 3 for both of them. Okay. And now we're going to move on to color, which is another common issue that happens when making courses on Canvas that Ally might pick up on as well. So I'll leave this to Aryan.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Yep. So colors must have enough contrast, for instance, between the color of the text and the color of the background. So text on buttons, icons, and graphics fall under this category. Colors should not be used to convey meaning or information on diagrams, maps, and other forms of graphics. Ally picks up on color accessibility issues, but it can be inconsistent. So using the Canvas accessibility checker in the rich text editor can help to catch what Ally might miss. So let's pull up the poll here to see which color combination is the most readable.
Or inaccessible, I suppose. So Marika, we might need to click a few more times to get those options up. So there should be 2 more.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so 3 combinations. Which one or which ones are inaccessible?
Okay, looks like we have an answer with E.
Great.
Option E.
So the only one that is accessible is combination B. There's enough color contrast between them. Maybe Aryan, can you talk a little bit to why combination A might not be very accessible?
Combination A is definitely not accessible because the background is a light color and so is the text, the foreground.
Yeah. It's also worth noting too that like with combination C, the text in the 18 pixels part is a bit more readable than the smaller text. But when put through a contrast checker, which is something that at ETS we tend to use quite a bit, it didn't pass the basic web accessibility guideline expectations or standards for color contrast accessibility. So if you're ever uncertain, that's why using something like Ally or the Canvas accessibility checker is really helpful for color, because we don't want to discourage people from using color at all. It's just important to be mindful when you are using it. Okay, so let's talk about support for Ally. So obviously we're starting this pilot and we want to make sure that everyone within the Faculty of Education feels supported, but not just supported, but empowered to use the tool. So of course, ETS will be supporting instructors with Ally. If you have any questions or concerns about the tool, if you're interested in learning more about it, or you just have just want to play around with a bit of guidance, please do get in touch. And the other thing too is that LT Hub has created a really in-depth instructor guide for the tool, which we will link in a moment. It's incredibly in-depth, so it does have it might be a little overwhelming, but it's very detailed. So having that detail, if you're looking to learn more about the tool, might be really up your alley and helpful. And so now we're going to open the floor to you. If you have any questions about the tool, if you'd like to see us demonstrate other functions or in more detail than we have, or any other sort of queries or concerns you may have, now is the time to ask. And again, if you're going to ask a question, you're welcome to raise your hand. You can type in the chat, or you can turn on your audio if you'd like to ask any questions. But if not, we might move to the next slide then, Marika.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we will be having more workshops on Ally coming up. So if you are hoping to learn more, if you weren't able to meet with us today, you know, people who may be interested in learning more about the tool, we will be hosting more in the new year. So please keep your eyes peeled for any events that may be popping up on our website about Ally. You're welcome to connect with us. We have a Twitter account, UBC_ETS on Twitter. You can subscribe to our mailing list, or of course, book a one-on-one consultation with us. And you can always visit our website as well, which is ets.educ.ubc.ca. Cool. So thank you everyone for coming. I'll pass back to Marika.
Yes, so thank you everyone for joining this workshop with us today. So hope you have learned a bit more about the tool Ally and why it is important to use it. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.